My wife, she had gotten saved, but I was not interested. A lot of stuff on the team was broke. I thought, boy, these people, they need help. Dale told me, he said, fix it. So I became the camp director. America, you to die. It was a magical show. You didn't go through that show without tears in your eyes. Connersville, Indiana was one of the highlights of Life Action. The stories are that salesmen driving into town would come under conviction. Of course, that's to bring back the glory story. That's a whole other story.
What's that story?
Dale loved to chase fire trucks. So if he heard sirens, he'd, let's go. Get in his Buick and chase fire trucks. We let him sing a solo in the meeting, and he paid for half the bus. And I said, Harvey can come back and sing anytime he wants to. I want to be a good person, and I want to be faithful.
Welcome to Changed Lives, a special limited series in which I explore the incredible stories of the people behind the scenes at Life Action, a ministry with a mission of reviving relationships through transformative events. Each of these individuals, my coworkers, have experienced God move in big and unexpected ways. And the more I heard their stories, the more I thought, people need to hear this. In this series, you'll get a first-hand look at how God is working in and through the people of Life Action, the challenges they face, the faith that sustains them, and the lives being transformed along the way. Their stories are powerful. In today's interview, I'm talking with Dan Puckett, a longtime Life Action staff member whose story is deeply woven into this ministry. For more than 48 years, Dan has served in just about every role imaginable, saying yes wherever he was needed along the way. In this special episode, we look back at Dan's early life, working on farms and oil fields in the South, the moment in his 30s when he gave his life to Jesus, and the decisive leap of faith he and his wife Vicci took when Life Action came to their church in the mid-1970s. This conversation is a look through nearly 50 years of Life Action history and the steady call to authenticity that has defined this ministry throughout. More than titles or accomplishments, Dan's heart has always been set on one legacy: to be known as a good and faithful servant. So as you listen, consider what faithfulness looks like in your own season. Life Action continues to invest in lives because of people like Dan and friends like you who step out in faith. Let's jump into today's interview. Well, Mr. Dan Puckett, the man, the myth, the legend, right?
The myth is mostly myth.
Well, I'm just so delighted that you're joining me today.
I'm good. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
I know that if Life Action had an encyclopedia of all of our adventures, you would probably be the one contributing the most information. You've been here for a bit.
I was there for a lot of it, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to learning more about it. But I would love to know a little bit about you before we jump into everything about Life Action. I'd love to learn where you're from.
Well, I was raised on a farm in southwest Kansas, and I was there till I was 12 years old. We moved to Oklahoma because farming was, we were farmers, had a bad drought, so we moved to Oklahoma, and we lived there 4 years in the oil field. My dad worked in the oil field, and I worked in the oil field too. And then we moved back to Kansas, back to our home, when I was a senior in high school. And I finished up my senior year, and then I went to college and graduated from Oklahoma State.
Okay. So in Kansas, what type of farming was your family involved in?
We were grain farmers and had cattle.
Okay.
Cattle and horses and hogs and just whatever.
Was that a long-standing tradition in your family? Was your dad carrying that on?
My dad was a farmer, and my granddad was a farmer. So it was a family thing. It was a family farm.
And so when you moved to Kansas, you mentioned that your dad worked on the oil field, and so did you. So you moved there when you're 12. So are you working in the oil fields?
My dad had an oil fields service company in Oklahoma. Okay. So and I was always big for my age, and he would put me on a service truck before I had a driver's license. Mm-hmm. And I'd go out to drilling rigs and work on stuff on the drilling rigs when they were drilling and stuff. And it was just something you did, you know. And then, so I grew up in the oil field. The oil field is a great place to learn stuff.
Like what?
You never say can't. You never say no. It's just got to go. So you learn that, and it's hard lessons and hard work, and time doesn't mean anything. You get the job done.
Oh.
And I've worked in mud up to my laying in mud under trucks, and working on drilling rigs when stuff was too hot to handle, and you just do it, get it done.
I have a feeling that lesson has proven helpful to you
Yeah,
through life action.
I
think we'll get into stories where maybe that comes up.
Never left me, but I love the oil field, yeah.
Oh. And so when you all moved back home, tell me a little bit about your family. Were the only? Did you have siblings?
I've got an older sister, and I've got a younger sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
And it's interesting about us kids, all four of us, we've all been married to the same person for over 50 years. Mm. And my brother is the youngest. He's 78 now. All the rest of us are in our 80s. And my mother lived to be 101. So our prospects are probably
pretty good.
But better plan to live a while.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your mom. What was she like?
My mother was a German lady. She decided when she was, she got married when she was 27 years old. She already had plans. She was going to have 4 kids. That was it. 4 kids. Going to have 4 kids. She had 4 kids. That was it. And then she was a farm wife. She baked. She cooked. We milked cows. We turned the cream separator and hauled cream to town. Had chickens. Gathered eggs. And during the harvest time, when we were harvesting wheat, my dad would be in the harvest field with the harvest hands, and she had fixed lunch. And it was my job to go out in the morning and catch 2. We'd buy chickens every spring. We'd buy 200 baby chicks. They'd come in the post office. We'd go to the post office, pick up the chickens, and put them in the brooder house. And time harvest came, they were old enough to eat. So I'd go out. My job would go out and catch 2 chickens and hang them up on the line. My mother would come along, cut the heads off, and would have fried chicken every day. My mother would pack a lunch, and we'd go up the harvest field to feed the harvest hands, and that's what she did. And she sewed. I don't think I had a store-bought shirt till I was in college. I mean, she made all my shirts. She made all my sisters. She made their dresses, and it's just
industrious.
Oh yeah, and great cook. We had a garden. It was just farm life. So yeah.
Yeah. And your dad was a farmer, and yep.
Yeah, he was a farmer and a mechanic. Mm-hmm. In the wintertime, you don't farm in Kansas. You just kind of lay low until the winter clears. But he worked in Kansas. There was where we lived. We lived in the what's called the Hugoton gas field, which is the largest natural gas field in the world, and it goes in Texas up into Kansas. So there was a lot of gas well work, and he worked in the wintertime. He'd go work for a place called Acid Engineers, and they were frackers, and they fracked these gas wells. So that's what he did in the wintertime. So he was primed for the oil field, so it didn't make any difference. But the farming just very dry country, very hard to make a living. And we had cattle, we had all that, but it's hard to make a living as a farmer.
Sure, yeah.
And we had a chance to go to Oklahoma and get involved in something else, so we did.
Yeah, yeah. And so was faith a big part of your family growing up?
I grew up in a church home, but I wouldn't call it necessarily a Christian home. We went to church 3 times a week, but it was not. It was nothing that impacted me particularly, other than how long do I have to do this? Mm-hmm. And so I got out of high school, I quit going, mm-hmm. And I went to college and I went to church maybe some, but no. It wasn't something that stuck, mm-hmm. because my dad was, he was a farmer, and we would, we'd go to church on Sunday and the pool hall on Monday. So I didn't see any reality. Mm-hmm. I didn't see where my mother was a very generous, very giving person, very social. She had a lot of friends. She's a good friend. And so, but there was nothing that, really stuck with me as far as faith was concerned. Just something, okay, I don't know what this is about. So
yeah. And so when you go to college then, what is your plan for life? What do you think you were going to do?
Well, when I went to college, I wanted to, go to college. So I went to Oklahoma State and got a 2-year degree in building construction. And at the end, near the end, Continental Oil Company, Conoco, they had their main offices just 40 miles north of Stillwater in a town called Ponca City. And that's where their national headquarters was. And so I got hired by Conoco. And I went to work for Conoco when I got out of college. And I worked there for 8 years. And while I was there, I met my wife. We got married. We adopted the boys. All of our children are adopted.
Okay.
So we got the boys in Oklahoma. Seth he was born in 66, and Luke was born in 69.
Okay.
So we got them, and then we moved to Texas. In my job with Conoco, I had the greatest job in the world. It was, I was a troubleshooter, and so and I worked all over the country and into Canada, but I traveled all the time. I was gone. I was just out of town. And I would come home and unpack one suitcase and pack another and get on another airplane. And I just said, I can't do this. So I found a job in Houston, Texas, in a plant working on the ship channel. So we moved to Texas as a family in 1970.
Okay.
And then we were there until I got saved in 1972.
Okay. So before we talk about that, tell me a little bit about your wife. So how did you meet? What's her name?
Okay. I lived in Ponca City, worked for Conoco. Pretty wild life. At the time, I was racing cars. So every weekend, we were off to the races. Mm. Well, one weekend, we got rained out, so I was home. And I came back because we got rained out, so I came back, and I had an apartment there in town, and I had a lot of guys just come and go or whatever. My apartment was kind of a hub for whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, my wife had just come back from Africa, where she'd been with her sister, and a guy and a gal said, "Hey, you need to meet this guy." So they came over to my apartment. They pulled up and, hey, and we met. They went back and told everybody else in town, "Hey, we're having a party at Dan's apartment." So they came. We had 2 or 3 cases of beer. We sat down drinking beer. And my wife and I met then. We talked a couple hours and just talked. And she lived just basically right around the corner. I didn't know she lived there. We lived there. We started dating. I was still working for Conoco, still traveling. So we met July 12th and got married September 4th.
Wow.
And I was out of town half that time. So we didn't know each other at all.
She didn't know what she was getting into.
No premarital counseling, had no clue. I just knew I didn't want to be alone anymore. So,
what's her name?
Vicci.
Mm-hmm.
So we got married in September. She was a nurse, and she worked at a doctor's office. And we tried to have children, couldn't. She couldn't have children. So, and we knew this before we got married. So I had to kind of make a commitment. I was willing to adopt children, which was kind of in it. So we started that and started the process with Deaconess Hospital in Oklahoma City, and we got our first boy, and then we got our second boy, and it was great. And she was a great mother, but like I say, I was traveling, I was, doing all kinds of stuff out of town, and I noticed she started going to church. Mm-hmm. Both of us smoked. She smoked like 2 packs a day, and I smoked like a pack a day. And I came home one time from a trip, and she wasn't smoking. What's going on here? And she was a lot nicer person. She started treating me a lot, it's just different. What's going on? So I found out that she had gotten saved. And I saw such a change in her life. I thought, wow. But I was not interested. I was, I didn't have any interest at all in any of that. But I was traveling, and Conoco has a huge complex in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I was down there working, and I spent, and of course you have weekends off. So I was in a weekend in Howard Johnson's motel, and there's, Howard, the motel chain, they put out a monthly magazine. It was in the hotel room. I said, then read it, and there's and there was an article in this paper in this magazine said, don't be a lame duck parent. Okay, so I read that article and said, if you want your kids to do something, you can't just tell them that you have to lead them. So, well, okay, I would like my kids to be in church. So I went home, but I told her, I said, I'm going to go to church with you. Wow, okay. So I did. So I started going to church for the sake of the boys. I didn't care anything about it, but for the sake of the boys. So I went to church. That was, I don't know, for a while. That wasn't very long before we moved to Texas.
Okay.
We were going to church at a big Baptist church in Pasadena, Texas. And she had some good friends there, and she was in a Bible study. And I was in Sunday school. I was going to Sunday school in church, and we were tithing. I thought, hey, if tithe's a good deal, so we did it. But I wasn't a Christian. I didn't want to be a Christian. But James Robinson came to town and did a citywide crusade in a football stadium there in town. And we went. And after a couple nights, I knew, okay, I'm not saved. I'm going to go to hell. Mm. So I got saved. That was in May of 72. And then things really snowballed after that. I got really involved with the church, and I was called to full-time ministry from that church. And I worked for Tenneco at the time, on the ship channel in a big plant. And so we said, okay, well, the next step is to go to school. So we moved to Kentucky. We moved to Louisville, Kentucky.
That is that's a lot you just said. You went from, I'll go because the boys need to go, to this preacher comes to town and I got saved. So what was that moment like, getting saved? What do you remember of that?
Well, I just remember that it was just totally transforming. The plant I worked in, I was the maintenance superintendent. I had 140 men under me, and we maintained this big chemical complex, this big plant. Before that, I was right there with all of them. And anyway, when I got saved, the only Bible I had was the Good News for Modern Man. So I brought that, and I put, I had an office, so I put it on my desk. And I'd quit smoking sometime before that, and poured out all the alcohol and quit drinking. The guys at the plant realized something was different. And of course, I was their boss. And but I just did my thing. Well, we had we had a big shop there. We worked on stuff, and we had one room that was kind of a machine shop. And there was every girly calendar you could think of was hanging on the walls. I mean, this is just what you did. And so I came in one day to that place, and every calendar was gone. They took them all down. And I was their preacher boy. They just lavished on me, and it was just a great testimony. And it's just a really good time. And then I left. I felt called, so we moved to Kentucky to go to school.
Because you felt called to go into ministry at that point. Yes,
I felt called while we were while we were living in Pasadena. Our church started a bus ministry. Very involved in the bus ministry and very busy. And so I said, okay, I'm going to be a bus minister, because that's the thing.
What does that mean, bus ministry?
Well, churches run church buses and go out and pick up kids, bring them to church. So we were running 9 buses in Texas, and I was very involved. And this is what I want to do. So there was a school in Kentucky that taught you how to be a bus minister. So we moved to Kentucky. I went to school, graduated from the school, and then I became the head of the school after that. So, and we were there. We were there working, in that church, because after school, I went on staff at the church. There's kind of an interesting story in the midst of that. When we left Texas, I knew God had called us, and we had a very nice house in Texas. And literally in Texas, I made more money than we knew how to spend. I really did. It was a great life. But we said, okay, we're going to move to Kentucky. Our house hadn't sold. We were still making payments on the house. Didn't have a job. I was going to school. So we moved to Kentucky. And so the first week we were there, I went down to an employment agency. I said, I need a job. I'm here, I'm going to school, I need a job. And I want to go be in school for a short time, but I need a job. So, well, there's no way. Yeah, that's impossible. Not going to work. But 2 days later, they called me back and said, hey, there's a company, American Synthetic Rubber Corporation, who had a big rubber plant in Louisville, said they're looking for somebody with exact what you have, your skill set, and they need you for a short time. So I went to work, and when I left Tenneco, I had 2 weeks vacation. But I went to work. I left Tenneco and went to work for American Synthetic Rubber Company. Never missed a paycheck. And I worked there all the time I was in school. It was a good job. It's kind of a rough place to work, but it's a good job. So finished school, and then I'm out of school and on staff at the church.
Oh, wow. Were you worried at that time at all, or were you confident? I mean, you can look back on that time now and see that it was God's hand, obviously. But at the time, do you recall being worried or anxious about how you'd support your family?
No, I don't remember being worried.
Yeah.
I just remembered the office at the chemical plant in Pasadena. I had an office upstairs. We had this big, this big building. And I can remember walking up those stairs, and I got to that landing, just hit me. Okay, God's calling me. And I made the statement then, either God is God or he's not. Mm. I said, okay, we're going to go with this. And we just, we never visited Kentucky. We just loaded a truck, moved there. The school had helped us find, they had a house, lined up for us to rent. Moved in, away we went. Never, wow. And probably I don't think I ever looked back. I never thought about it.
And so you started working for the church, okay?
And I was working in the bus ministry. We ran 47 bus routes. Brought in like 3,000.
To that church, you brought in 47 bus routes.
Like 3,000 kids every Sunday.
Was it always kids?
Well, we brought in a few adults and teenagers, and we worked the projects. There was a lot of projects in Louisville, so we'd go on the projects and became the head of the bus ministry there, and did that for 4 years, I guess, 3-4 years.
What did you love about that ministry?
I don't know. I don't know what I loved about it. It was very hard work.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge. I felt equipped. The church was a very large, aggressive church. We're going to baptize 5,000 this year, and we did. But it was not good. It was not something you want to write home about. So, but anyway, it was very aggressive, very fast-paced, busy. I was working 7 days a week. So I don't know that I enjoyed it particularly. Matter of fact, well, part of that story is that because we were so aggressive in such a big bus ministry church, our pastor and our leadership decided to buy 50 brand new buses. So the Ward Bus Company in Conway, Arkansas, built 50 buses for us, painted them red, white, and blue. They had red, and they looked like a flag going down the road. And so we took a delivery of those. We ended up with 40 of them. We sold 10 before we got them. Ended up with 40 brand new buses. And our pastor signed the mortgage. It was $270,000 for those buses. The payments were $7,300 a month. Well, the church was broke. They didn't have any money. So their plans were, we will sell a bus a month to make the payment. We'll sell a bus for $7,000, and we'll pay the mortgage on the buses.
So why did they buy the buses?
Because it was a super aggressive.
Yeah.
We had to be the biggest, had to be the best, had to be the brightest. We had to show off.
And then realized didn't have the money to do that.
Well, they had a plan. They said, okay, we're going to sell a bus a month to make the payment.
Gotcha.
Well, somehow or other, in the midst of all this, whoever mortgaged the buses gave us the titles. So we didn't have any lien on any buses. It was just the pastor's word. So they would sell a bus, but they wouldn't make the payment. They'd spend the money on something else. So I went to the pastor. So we were in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
The pastor was in trouble. He was because he signed the mortgage. He was responsible for this payment, $7,000 a month. So I went to him. I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what to do." And I was running the bus ministry. We were running 47 church buses, 11 school buses every day. And we had a shop, and we were working on buses, and we were buying and selling buses all the time. And so I said, "Okay, I will take that debt, and I'll pay it off." He said, "Okay."
You personally?
Well, me and the bus ministry.
Yeah.
But I said, "I will
Yeah.
take that debt, and I'll pay off that $250,000. So, but I said, "I've got to have my own bank account where you guys can't spend the money." So they did that for me, and I had to have one other guy sign with me, but I had to sign the check or the money didn't get spent. So I did that, and I started. And I was, we had a lot of extra buses, so I was selling buses, making payments. Things were going well, and then I ran out of buses. And one day a guy drove in a big Mercedes car. His name was Bob Fredericks. Pulled in, and he said, "Here you can sell buses." I said, "Yeah, we sell buses all over the country." He said, "Well, I'm a Ward bus dealer in Cincinnati." He said, "I've got 200 buses I can't sell." He said, "I don't have any money." But he said, "Can we work something out?" I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I will come and get your buses, a few at a time, bring them down here and sell them, and we'll split the profit." And I said, "You help pay the expenses, to get the bus ready to go." He said, "Okay." So for the next 3 years, we sold buses all over the United States into Central America. We had a guy in Austin, Texas that said, "Hey, I sell buses for transport or for transit buses in Costa Rica and Guatemala." And they take the buses to Austin, put diesel engines in them, and take them to Central America. And he said, "Any bus you have that's 66 passengers, has air brakes, we'll take it." So I had a lot of those, and I just give them a call. "Okay, I got 6 buses ready to go." They'd fly people in with a check, give me the check, they'd drive the buses to Austin. And then we'd had, churches all over the country were calling us because, I had a painter. We painted the buses, we lettered it, we gave them what they wanted. So I had churches call me and say, "Hey, we need a bus." "Okay, what do you want?" "Well, it's got to be 60 passenger, and it's got to be purple," or something like that. "Okay." And it's okay. "Well, I'll call you when we get ready." So we'd bring it in, get it all fixed up, paint it, letter it. They'd come and get it, hand me a check. That was going on every week. We were selling buses every week. During that time, we probably made over $400,000 in that operation. Just in that, I had my own checkbook, had my own bank account, had my own employees that I paid. And so we worked that and paid off the mortgage. Paid off the last payment, and I went in and told the pastor, I said, "I'm done." He said, "You don't trust me, do you?" I said, "Not really." I transitioned. I basically hired my replacement, paid his moving expenses to come there, and set him up and helped him get started. And then I was done with the church. I was done with that church. And so that was in 1976.
Okay.
So then I started I wanted to preach, so I wanted to be an evangelist. So I started my own evangelistic association. I did a few meetings, but it just wasn't working. So I knew I had to do something. And that's kind of the part of the story where you circle back and how Life Action gets involved. Yes. Well, in 1974, we'd been there at that church for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and I was on staff.
Which church was this again?
It was Beth Haven Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. It was actually in Valley Station, which is on the south side of Louisville. And so we were there, and like I say, we were running church buses in 2 states, 2 or 3 counties. We were going 50 miles to pick up kids, bring them to church. It was crazy, but it was working. But in 1974, we had a guy on staff named Wayne Golson who was a graduate of Bob Jones University. Well, Dell was a graduate of Bob Jones, and there was a magazine came out talking about life action. So the staff member said, "Hey, we need to have these guys." And we was the kind of church that we were a dog and pony show. I mean, we had different speakers every week. We were program heavy. Okay, we'll have them in. Now we ask churches to clear their schedule, and we didn't do that. We were running 47 church buses, and we were going to clear our schedule for anybody because we had averages and whatever. So when Life Action started, they didn't start Sunday morning. Now Dell preached Sunday morning, but we had Happiness Club would have had 800 kids.
Okay.
Because we had 800 kids in first and second grade church. We had 500 in the Dynamite Club. Well, Life Action couldn't handle that at all. So Sunday morning we did our thing. And then Sunday night we actually all the bus workers and all the people could then come to church. And they started Sunday morning. I wasn't in the Sunday morning service. My wife was, but I wasn't because I was out helping with the buses. And then I usually did the first and second grade church was 800 kids. I remember Dell preaching Sunday night and Monday night. Now back in those days, you didn't have just one speaker. Dell would preach, and then he'd have team preachers and other preachers. So Friday night after the service, Dell would take his family and go catch a train to the next church. Mm-hmm. They didn't have testimonies. I don't remember any testimonies. It was just hard preaching, which was good, but I don't remember any particular thing from that time. Mm-hmm. It's just okay. They were here, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I thought, I might want to do that someday. Hmm. But I was on staff at the church and had a family, and we were busy. And well, that was in '74. Well, usually Life Action didn't go back to a church for 5 years because Dell's reasoning was, I don't have that many messages. I can't go back to the people change. So, but they came back in '76. Mm. After I paid off the buses, told the pastor I was done, but I was still around and still helping out because we still lived there. Well, Life Action came back. I remember in '74, I didn't have much to do with any of it because I was busy, things going on. And like I say, we didn't, I went to church on Sunday, in the evening services, but during the daytime, it was business as usual. And we came back in '76, and of course, I had a full garage to work on the buses, and we had mechanics. We had a full scale thing. Well, it seemed like that a lot of stuff on the team was broke. So I worked on a lot of their equipment, and I thought, boy, these people, they need help. Well, I worked on one of the guys' cars, Les Olalaw, who was the family guy on the team. I worked on his car, and he and I kind of struck up a friendship. And he told Dell, he said, Dell, we need this guy. Okay. And he said, you need to come to Life Action. Okay. I didn't talk to Dell at all during that time. Dell, the team, it was kind of an interesting deal. At that time, they had the red team and the blue team and the white team. The white team was the office team. And the white team had Dell and Vernon and Dwayne Ward. The white team had Dynamite, Debbie, had the main children's workers on that team. They would come to the church. We had the red team and the blue team, who were just singers and the family seminar guy. Mm-hmm. So when they came, they would come to a church. The white team would join the red team, and they would do Sunday morning through Friday night. Mm-hmm. And then the white team would leave, go join the blue team, and start again on that next Sunday. Mm-hmm. And then the red team, whoever was here, left. The family seminar guy would close out the meeting. Sure. So anyway, he said, he talked to Dell, and one thing led to another, and we ended up coming up here in December of 1976 to meet with Del. And so we met, and his statement was, if you can do anything else, don't come here. If anything else you can do, do it, but don't come here.
Why do you think he said that?
That's what he said to everybody.
Oh.
He said, unless God is calling you and you can't do anything else, don't come. And that was pretty much the rule. And so we said, well, feel like God's calling us. So we worked at raising some support. And
you were supposed to come here to be the guy that fixed everything? Because that sounds like a lot of travel. What were you coming here for?
But when I came, I was hired to come in as the conference center director. We had the camp. We had a camp director, had full running camp, which we didn't have any conference center. Del had a lot of plans, but the camp was all there was at that time. And so I was over the camp. The camp at that time, this was 1977, spring of 77, had a camp director. He was a great guy, great camp director. Loved kids, great preacher, but he couldn't manage money. Camp was in debt. We owed people in town. We weren't paying our bills. And we had 40 team members at the camp. We had 40 horses at the camp. And Del was having to buy hay to feed these horses. And the camp ran 24/7, 365, because the headquarters was at the West Winds Apartments. Well, those people lived over there, but they came to the camp to eat.
Every day.
So the camp kitchen ran. We fixed meals every day but Sunday night. So the camp kitchen was running.
I didn't realize that. 7
days a week, 3 meals a day, 2 meals on Sunday. Sunday night you're on your own. So there was money, and the propane bill was $3,000 a month for just the lodge, and the horse bill was, camp owned a few horses, but the deal was that if a family had horses and they wanted to come, if they brought their horses and we could use them on the trail rides, we had to keep the horses up. So we had this big bill of feeding them. Mm-hmm. And then we had the farrier, the guy that come in to do all the horseshoes and give them all the shots and everything. And these 40 team members, we didn't used to recruit like we do now. If a team was on the road and they met somebody they felt like would be a team member, say, hey, you're in, go to the camp. So we had this pool of people. And we had a lot of team members at that time. The team members would just quit. They'd just leave. We had stories like one guy, they said, where's so-and-so? Well, he's out in the truck packing his closets, and his parents are here to get him. Really? Well, okay. So we need a team member. So I'd send a team member out to him, something.
From the camp?
Yeah.
So you just kind of had this recruiting crew
back
at a pool where you could send them out.
We pulled them up, and then when it came time to form the new teams, then they just become team members.
Sure.
So anyway, so there's a lot of expense. So Del told me, he said, okay. He said, fix it. So I came here, and I was, okay. So okay, I got to fix this thing. So I cut the horses in half. Couldn't do anything about the kitchen because we were, that's how we did it.
Yeah.
And those people had to eat, and but going back to the white team that was between the red and the blue teams, they did all the scheduling. They bought all the clothes. They did everything from the road. That was the office trailer. It had a special built, had offices in it, telephones, and that's where they did all the scheduling. They scheduled the teams. They did everything from that trailer on the road. And that trailer would go place to place to place. Well, the camp director left. He took his horses and his family and left. A couple other families took their horses and left. So, okay, the horses are manageable now. Now, we were running camp. It was a full youth camp. We were having 2 weeks of junior camp and 6 weeks of senior high camp. And so I became the camp director, just trying to pay bills, get things going, keep the camp running. And when you do youth camp, you don't have the parents there, so you got the state down your throat. We had to have WSIs, water safety instructors, so many lifeguards, and the state fire marshal came through the camp every year and would just make us do all kinds of things to our buildings. Health department was just down our throat all the time. It was a tough time. But we had camp. And I was a camp director from that fall till 1982. I don't know what I was doing. I was on the road with a team.
Okay, so you were the director, but then you also went on the road and traveled?
Yeah, we had a team at the camp.
Okay.
And it was at that time called the white team, because the other white team had kind of gone away. There's another story between this red and blue team. Dell and Vernon traveled together on the white team, and they would go to a church and they team preached. Well, we were in eastern Tennessee, and there was a meeting down there that just broke out, and team couldn't leave, so they split up. So Vernon took the blue team and did other meetings while Dell stayed, because Dell was the kind of guy that he would not leave a church until he was sure that God was through. Mm-hmm. He didn't. He'd stay and keep preaching. Well, the schedule had to go on. So then Vernon took the blue team and Dale had the red team. And Vernon went and his schedule took him into California. So he had a team, and they went to Royal Blues Church in Redlands, California. Well, that church owned a camp on Lake Shasta. And so Pastor Blue talked Vernon into coming on and taking the camp and starting a ministry there. So the ministry split. The red team with Dell, blue team with Vernon. So they took their team and they started LIGHT, L-I-G-H-T, Living Insights in Godliness, Holiness, and Truth. That was a team. And they were doing meetings. They were supposed to only do meetings in California and Oregon and Washington, but they were running out of meetings, so they started doing it. Anyway, it was Vernon's ministry, so we had Life Action and LIGHT. And it was not a easy parting. I don't want to call it a split, but it was kind of a split. And so, Dell was upset, and I said, well, Dell, I said, there's nothing wrong with this. I said, we got to help. What do you mean help? I said, we got to give him a truck. Okay, so we gave him a truck and some equipment. So they go to California, do the thing. So that was the first break off, and that was when Vernon started the blue team. Well, I was still at the camp with the ranch team, and they'd already made a decision that the ranch team could not be just a ranch team going in and out. We had to become a full road team. We had to do hospital assemblies. We had to be fully equipped for everything. So, okay, so we did. So Tim St. Clair and I bought a brand new Airstream trailer, and I bought Tim a trailer. So we went on the road as our families in, I don't know, 78, 79, whatever. And so we became a full road team. I was on the road, and we would also run camp. So we would go on the road from September till we came in for snow camp. We had a winter camp between Christmas and New Year's. We'd have 500 kids. We'd have 2 camps, about 250 kids in each camp for 2 days. So our team members had to come in on Christmas afternoon. We started camp the next morning. And then we would do camp, we'd do winter camp, and then after winter camp was over, we'd load our trailers up and head south. We'd go to Florida or somewhere to start the road team schedule. Then we'd come back in early enough to get summer camp going. So we'd have to come back and get summer camp organized and, get all the team members, find a WSI and get our lifeguards and all the camp counselors, get everything in place for summer camp. And we did that for years. We just did that. You didn't have a day off. A vacation was unheard of. You didn't do it because you were on the road or you're at the camp. And you're at the camp. And we had a lot of different camps. We had women's retreats, men's retreats, businessmen's retreats, teen retreats, whatever. And very, very, very well attended, very well done. We We had a ladies' retreat one time out there. We had Kathy Rice, who's Bill Rice's wife. I don't know if you know anything about the Rice. You probably don't. But Kathy Rice was a well-known, woman speaker. Had her come in. We had 300 ladies at the ladies' retreat at the camp. And I can remember that our food bill for that retreat was higher than anything we'd ever done. So, but it was great. And so we had to, so we had these retreats, and it was going great. It was, we were losing money. So it was, rocking along. And like I say, in '82, I was not a camp director. I could run the business side and keep the bills paid. So that's what I did while Rich Kearns became and he was great with kids, and he lasted for 2 years, and he left, and then I was camp director again. So anyway, and I was on the road still, on the road. And then in '84, Steve Canfield was traveling with Dell, and Steve wanted a team. He didn't have his team. So, so I had the white team traveling, me and Tim St. Clair. And so they came out, Dell, and we're going to give your team to Steve. Okay, that's right. What am I going to do? Well, so you're going back to camp. And at that time, this is another story, but Life Action had started a church in Buchanan, Fellowship Bible Church. We met at Ottawa School. Dell said so we're bringing you off the road, and we want you to pastor the Bible church. Okay. So, I was at the point then that, okay, whatever leadership says, I'll do. So took it, and I was not a pastor. I can preach sometimes, but pastor, not very good. So, but I still full-time Life Action and trying to do this. And so, and people started leaving. So the church lasted maybe a year after that. Then we said, we decided to just close it down. So we did. We met in the library during the off season. When the team members came in, they all came to the church. So we filled the gym up. It was good. It was, we had a lot of fun. But anyway.
That's so interesting.
So anyway, Fellowship Bible Church. So we closed that down. And then when I came to Life Action, I came to be a preacher. I didn't come to be a mechanic. So I didn't tell anybody, and I hid my toolbox. And I went down to the office every day and was in the camp office and doing camp stuff. And we didn't have any equipment. We had one old lawnmower is all we had at the camp. And I looked out one day, and the lawnmower was out there, broke down. They were trying to work it into what they were doing. So I said, okay. So I went out and fixed the lawnmower. Well, that was the beginning of.
And here we are.
So I took the camp team, and I had 2 vans. Well, the camp had a van, nice Chevrolet, red and white, beautiful van. And then I bought another van so the team could travel in 2 vans and a trailer to haul the equipment. And back then we used the old reel-to-reel recorders, and it was ancient. It was old stuff. Well, our team ran smooth. We didn't have breakdowns. We just did what we were doing, and the road teams, literally, and this is, Mr. Whiteford was furnishing trucks for the teams, and we had 3 semis. The one was the office. The other 2 were team trucks. Well, they could not get from one church to another without a breakdown.
Some things never change.
And they were calling in. They'd call Ron and say, okay, the truck broke down. We need another truck. And he was getting pretty tired of it. So, but I was I was sailing along, no problems. So Dell came to me and said, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but will you do for these other teams what you do for the camp team, ranch team? I said, yeah. So I started teaching them how to check the oil. They didn't check the oil and do anything. Check the oil, and Mr. Whiteford was so grateful that they stopped having breakdowns. He and I became really good friends. So, and that started the whole thing. And then, okay, now we got this. We got to maintain this stuff, because there was nothing. There was no maintenance. We didn't do anything. We could take them down to Whiteford's and have them worked on because they were his trucks. Okay. And so, one thing led to another. So anyway, that kind of started me on the path. Okay, I can fix stuff and I'll fix it. And well, that turned into pretty much a full-time job. And then, of course, the American show was immersed in there in late 1979. The show started in 1980 in the spring, and that was huge. That was big. And so we got the American show on the road, and Steve Canfield, he took that team for 9 months, and they took that team and toured America for 9 months, and just wore everybody out. So then we decided, okay, we can't have just one team do this all the time. So we said, okay, we're going to split it between the two teams. We had one set of equipment, but we had two teams. So one team was going to do one-nighters for 2 weeks. Then we would meet somewhere as two teams, swap the equipment over the other truck, and that team then would go do one-nighters for 2 weeks.
That takes a lot of planning.
Oh, yeah. We would meet up somewhere, 2 trucks on a parking lot, swap all the equipment over, and keep going. But that was in the days when you didn't have days off. You didn't, it's just unheard of. We used to do a 2-week summit, Sunday through Sunday through Sunday, and leave on Sunday night, and start one-nighters Monday night, and do one-nighters for 2 weeks, back into a summit. The only day off we had was the Monday in the middle of the summit. Everything else was traveling, going, and
good thing you grew up on the oil field.
Yeah, well, it was it's what you did, and but anyway, we did that for probably a year or two, and then we decided, okay, and then we bought another set of equipment, so both teams could have their equipment, and we were doing America, and then Dale used to take every March after a few years, he'd take his family, and he'd go to Colorado. And he'd go out to a place in Dillon, and they'd be there for a month as a family, just taking family time. And Nancy was involved. Nancy, Roy Bronkema, and I were kind of, I guess we were the creative team. And so Nancy really wanted to do a family show. Dale didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do a family show. America was all he wanted to do. Roy and Nancy and I hopped a plane, flew to Denver, went out to meet with Dell, try to talk him into this family show. Well, he got on board, and so we did it. So we did the family show, started that in 1985. I had been involved in helping put this show together. The team had never seen the music till we got there. I had to drive to Wisconsin, pick up the slides, and come back and drive to Texas to meet the team with the slides and the music. Mm. So, but there's a song in that show, Catching the Cradle. I never heard that song before. It broke my heart. I said, okay. And then I called my kids, said, hey. And it changed my life to hear that Catching the Cradle. And that the 2 road teams were doing the productions. So I said, okay, well, we start a full-time special production team. So in 1985, we launched the White Team. John Norville, Tina Norville, man and wife, they led that team. And, I bought them a motor home and put all that equipment together, and we launched that team. 1985, that's when Tim and Tammy Rinsberger came. They were on that team, and so we started that team, and it was brutal. That
was the one night.
That was one-night production team.
Right. And what was the name of the family?
Family Holding On for Life was the name of the program.
Okay.
And we did America and Family. So the team had to have 2 programs up to date, ready to go.
And it was a lot of singing program? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was a musical.
Musical, okay.
I love the family program. I've always loved it. It was always my, and the team members enjoyed it. It was just fun. Yeah. If you ever watch a video of it, you just say, wow, this is a great show. Yeah. And so we did the family show and and we did the America show. And then the midst of all that, Dell got sick, and really sick in Fort Smith, Arkansas was his last meeting he got where he couldn't preach. So Tim had to start preaching. So they were going to fly Dell home. And of course, Dell didn't live very long after that. A little bit on Nancy. At the church I was at in Kentucky, when we built the new auditorium, like I said, we were super programmed. It was a dog and pony show. Well, we had the Southwide Baptist Fellowship, which was it was like the Southern Baptist Convention, only it was, independent churches. And Nancy and her dad, Nancy was 16 years old, came to that conference, and she spoke. I didn't hear her speak. I was doing something else, but I remember that story about her and her dad being there, and she spoke at the Southwide Baptist Fellowship. And the Life Action team, they had just been in Connersville, Indiana. Well, Connersville, Indiana was it's still one of the highlights of Life Action. Two churches had split years ago, and they went in and started meetings, and God just moved in and just revolutionized. And the main church, ran a full-page newspaper ad asking the town for forgiveness, and they went to the other church and resolved things. Well, they wanted to have a meeting in the other church, so the ranch team went down, and they were having meetings in both churches at the same time. Well, Connersville, like I say, it was so amazing that the stories are that salesmen driving into town would come under conviction and say, "What is going on in this town?" "Oh, they're having a meeting over there." And so people were getting saved. Just amazing things were happening. Well, that team that was in there, they came to the Southwide Baptist Fellowship, and we kept two team members in our home. We were still on staff of the church. And that was probably the thing that sealed the deal for us coming to Life Action. It was Mecca McSpadden and a couple of other girls stayed with us. Nancy was such an integral part. She traveled with Dell, and she did ladies' meetings with the team. She had her motor home, always had somebody drive her motor home and whatever else. So, well, when Dell died, it was a hard time for her, it was a hard time for me, because I lost my friend. Dell was we were friends. We used to, at the time, we had an airplane. The ministry had an airplane. D.G. Segal, one of our major benefactors over the years, he had a company in Memphis called Mid-Continent. Well, he had an airplane, and he was going to upgrade for his own plane. So he had this twin-engine Cessna. He said, "Okay, you guys can use this." So we had a pilot. Ray Gleason was our pilot. And so we had this plane. And Dell would go over and say, "Hey, pack up. We're going to go to Mississippi today." Okay, so we go get on the plane, and he'd want to go look at a piece of property or something. Dell was a great entrepreneur. He was always looking for a way, always looking for a deal. And so we'd just get in a plane, fly to Mississippi, look at a piece of property, and come back.
Yeah, you probably had a lot of time to talk.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're on a plane, you're 5-hour flight to, on a twin-engine Cessna prop job, long flight. When we first came to the camp, we lived in the middle A-frame, and Dell and Gina lived in the south A-frame. So we were neighbors. Dell loved to chase fire trucks. So if he heard sirens, he'd, "Let's go," get in his Buick and chase fire trucks. So that was crazy times.
Yeah. So there was, I'm sure it was, you mentioned it was a difficult time for Nancy and a difficult time for you when he passed away.
Yeah. It was very hard. It was, I was on the executive leadership team at the time, along with Tim St. Clair and Steve and John Myers and some others who were there, Byron. And so we met with Dell. We was at the Broadmoor Hotel in St. Joe, there on the lake. And that's where we had our meetings. That's where, that's whenever we came up with the 12 cutting edge commitments. Because Dell was there, quite sick, but he was there. And we said, okay, what makes Life Action Life Action? So we listed the 12 things, which became the 12 cutting edge commitments: prayer, vision for revival, faithfulness, Holy Spirit. And so that was where, that was all formulated. And we kept asking Dale, what do we, he said, don't look to me, look up. We literally reformed the ministry, and then after he passed away, we didn't know what to do. So I didn't think the ministry would make it. I didn't. I thought, and my analogy was life action is like a clock, and Dell is the mainspring. It's wound up, and that's it. When that mainspring runs down, we're done. But then the ministry continued. Byron was a masterful leader, a great fundraiser, great recruiter, and but those were tough days. Those were very tough days to try to morph into something. But Tim St. Clair, who took Dell's team, was a great preacher and masterful guy. In camp, like I say, I was camp director from like late 77 till 82, and Rich Kearns was to like 84. Then I was camp director again. Okay, well, I didn't want to be camp director. I was not good at it. So I had a friend named Artie Parlin who had his own ministry, had a youth ministry. So I said, why don't you come and run the camp? So they came in 85, and he ran the camp till 1992. And that was when we decided, okay, we're done with youth camp, and so we're going to start family camp. Mm-hmm. Well, when Artie left in 92, and he was going to another ministry somewhere. So we helped him. We gave him a bus and a bunch of equipment, and off he went to start Encounter Revival Ministries. And so I was camp director again. Well, Jimmy and Lori were there, but we had started, we were still running the special productions team, and John and Tina Norville were kind of at the end of their run. And so I asked Jimmy and Lori, will you go out with the team? And so Jimmy and Lori, they went with that team, 92, 93. And so it was me and Henry. That was it. Me and Henry. We had to transition. We had to go from dormitory cabins to family cabins.
Yeah. And build it back up. Start all over.
So we had this, so we had these dormitory cabins which were literally horrible. So Henry, basically by himself, remodeled that cabin and turned it into what it is now. It's called Hilltop. Beautiful. That was our first family cabin. We would take a cabin a year and turn it into a family cabin. You've heard the stories. The first year, I don't think we had anybody.
Cancel it, right?
Had some missionaries, and canceled the first year. Jimmy and Lori had come back off the road, and Jeff and Maria Mann, they were on the blue team. They came back off the road. He joined camp staff, so he just kind of began to grow again, and over the years it just caught on.
Yeah. But
we did something that's, I don't know whose idea it was. We were sitting around. We got to have something in camp that's different than other camps. So we came up with the concept of the family assistant. And the family assistant has probably been the one thing that has put our camp in a different place. Because most people don't do that.
No.
And so we had family assistants, and team members would, assist a family, and it was a hit.
It makes a world of a difference to
It was a hit, and so Jimmy he started off as an interim camp director, and then he did that a while. Then Mike Lee came, and one thing after another, then Ryan Loving and whoever else has been camp directors.
Yeah, it's been a bit. And so since you came off the road and then came back and you've been in the camp world, has that been the world that you've stayed in mostly since that time?
No, I didn't have anything to do with it, really. I had very little to do other than just the construction, financing, building buildings, a little bit in programming, but I let Jimmy and others do that. I didn't get involved.
And so have you just naturally stepped into the role of, wherever is needed, it seems
whatever
like.
needed to be done. 92 through family camp, we still had teams on the road. Our special productions team, like my daughter, Rachel, she was on the special productions team for a year. and they were in 250 churches that year. And it was hard. It was, team members were just quitting. And we were having a lot of problem with team members. I think it was my idea, but we were having staff meetings down in Georgia somewhere, and I said, why don't we, interrupt and have, and let that team do a summit, a 10-day meeting to break up their schedule. Okay. So we scheduled 6 meetings a year. First year we met in Virginia, Cincinnati, El Paso, Los Angeles, Idaho. And so I did out. So my wife didn't travel with me. I would go out, but, she went with me on a couple of them. But I would go out, stay in host homes with team members sometimes. And so I did 6 of those a year. So I was away from home again, traveling by myself. And we did that just to give the team a break and to keep them from going crazy. Yeah. So that was part of that. And then we finally stopped the special productions team because we couldn't schedule. Okay.
Was that in the 90s?
Stopped
or?
Late 90s, early 2000. And then
it kind of went out of style.
Well, you could schedule. Well, we'd probably been everywhere. We had been a lot of places.
That's true.
And everybody said, well, you come up with a new program.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the Bring Back the Glory story. That's a whole other story.
What's that story?
Bring Back the Glory.
Mm-hmm.
Del was gone, and Nancy, and we had done a program on the nation, program on the family. Nancy wanted to do a program on the church. So we started the painful process of doing Bring Back the Glory. We were trying to do stuff with the equipment that didn't exist yet. So we had to find out, okay, somebody's going to build this. Okay, so we bought the first one. Our first video projector, just barely dim, cost us $20,000. And it was just, so we were doing all this stuff on this team, trying to get it going. We had some guys programming it who didn't know what they were doing, so we had to bring another programmer in to program all the slides. We did the first show in Nacogdoches, Texas, in George Middlebrook's church. So I met the team. I had the equipment in a truck. So I drove the truck down to Nacogdoches, met the team. We did that show there, and then that started the Bring Back the Glory show.
What's the premise of that show?
Well, it starts off with the history in the Old Testament of the glory of God in the temple with Solomon and how God's glory. And then we go into the church Sunday morning and we try to be very relational with, okay, this is people playing church and blah, blah, blah. And then you get into some pretty serious stuff. And it was a message to the church and to the families. And so it was trying to bring revival, trying to give people history of the Great Awakenings. We had people that played the part of, like Gilbert Tennant, who was revivalist in the early Great Awakenings, and tell the story of revival. And it was good. Of course, the one-nighters, and we, literally our schedule for the road teams fed off the one-nighters because we had 3 or 4 guys in scheduling. We had like Ryan Loving and Chris Kirk and 3 or 4 others, and I was in charge of that. So I said, you got to make 50 phone calls a day. Got to record it. I got to look at your log, see how many calls you made every day.
They were calling churches that had hosted us for the
one-nighters. No, they just called anybody.
Yeah, okay.
Cold turkey. We would just do cold turkey calls, and we'd get mailing lists, and we'd do everything we could do. But when we were scheduling, we'd go into a church, and if you did the American show, they wanted you back.
Sure.
I mean, that was, they'd never seen anything like it. And our technology was cutting edge. It was right there. Nobody's seen anything like this before. Not true now, but then it was. And so we would go in and they'd say, wow. And they'd have us back. And so you'd schedule crusade summits, off of the one-nighters. Well, when the one-nighters kind of started to taper and we couldn't schedule them, then that affected the church scheduling.
So you said when you were working on that program, you heard the song Cats in the Cradle and that changed your life. Can you tell me about that? How did that change your life?
Well, the song talks about, a father and a son, catching the cradle, silver spoon, and how just too busy. Too busy. And I thought, wow. And I was already past. My kids were grown. They were in college or already married. I said, man, I messed this up. So I called all my kids and tried to make it right and tried to change, what I could. They always tell you family's number one priority or, number two, family. Well, we didn't live that because we were too busy. We were, we had road teams going. You had this and that. And you had to, the schedule was always king. You had to, if a team rolled, period. And that's just how it was. And there was no excuses. You couldn't come back and say, well, we couldn't. No. Team's got to roll. So the teams rolled. And whatever it took. If it took working all night, you did it. So anyway, that was how it was. And that's what I learned in the oil field. You don't say no. You don't say can't. You just do it. In 2000, they wanted to build, this building. And so we got the property, had an architect, had the plans, and Byron asked me to be the project manager for this building. It's okay. But he didn't say you don't have to do anything else but this. He said do this plus everything else you're doing. So I was still getting working with road teams, running staff training, and keeping up with road teams, and still doing. I think I was still doing some of the meetings with this team, going out for 6 weeks at a time. But anyway, I started this building in 2000, and we finished in 2004.
A ministry. We run on the kindness of others giving us money, right? Mm-hmm. And so you've been here since the late 70s. You've seen the ups and downs of that. What has that been like to watch that, and how has that impacted your faith?
When we came here, we didn't have our support. We had a little bit, didn't have much. But Del told us to come anyway. And so we came. In those early years at the camp, it was tough. We didn't have any money. And but Del would go out and preach in the summertime. He'd go out and preach at churches. And he would get a love offering. He brought that love offering back and gave it to families for their, to help them. So we were, we didn't have any money. We were dirt poor. But God provided. We didn't have money. My son, my oldest son, he traveled on the road for a year with the red team with Dale, and he wanted to go to Liberty. He wanted to be an accountant. He wanted to go to Liberty as college. Well, at the time, there was an auto parts store in town called Neil's Auto Parts. Well, Neil Witherow and I were friends, and his son Tom went to Bob Jones. And so I was talking to him about it. He said, no. He said, your kid can't go to Liberty. He's got to go to Bob Jones. I'll help. I'll give you money every year to help him get through Bob Jones. I said, okay. So we took Seth to Bob Jones, and God provided every time, paid all the bills. He came out debt-free. Luke went to Northland Baptist Bible College, same thing. He was married at the time, had a child, but he went to Northland, paid all the bills. My daughter wanted to go to Cedarville. I said, I can't afford Cedarville, because Cedarville was expensive. I said, I can't afford Cedarville. But I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll go a semester at a time. If I can pay for it, you go back. If you can't, I'm not, then you're out of school. She went through, basically spent 5 years there, and then worked there afterwards, but paid every bill on time. She graduated debt-free. And God just, and I can't explain it. I don't know. And it's just been that way for all these years. In the ministry, we had these old buses that we had the Bluebird bus. We bought it brand new in 1994. And Harvey Gainey, who's a big trucker up in Grand Rapids, he came to what we call it vision gathering now. Then it was Rebuilders Retreat. Well, Harvey Gainey came. We let him sing a solo in the meeting, and he paid for half the bus. The bus was $180,000. He paid $90,000 on the bus. And I said, Harvey can come back and sing anytime he wants to. But anyway, Byron was a tremendous fundraiser, and he kept the ministry going, and he also kept it under control. We didn't. If we didn't have money, we didn't spend it. But those were good years. Those were years. If I needed something for the road teams, or if I wanted to buy equipment, and I'd turn in a budget every year. Like I'd turn in a budget and say, there ain't no way they're going to approve this, but they would. And I'd spend money. I'd buy gear. But at the time, our teams had the best gear there was. Put them out there and let's go.
Yeah, so you've been here for the years that were a little bit lean and the years where you were able to do that. What has been some of, like, obviously it's fluctuated in leadership and equipment and funding, but what do you think are some of the things that have just stayed consistent the whole time?
I would tell people, I said, I don't know much about ministry. I know that in churches I served in, there wasn't much integrity. There were some crooks. I said, I've never found that in Life Action. I said, integrity has been a mainstay, and there was integrity here, and I felt like I trusted Byron, and of course I trusted John Myers, and I trusted these guys, and I knew they were not crooks. And I couldn't say that for any other Christian ministry that I'd been associated with, except my first church in Texas. That was fine. But all these others, I said, these people don't have integrity. They do wrong things. And so,
yeah.
But I found integrity here, and that's probably what's really kept me here, is that I feel like, okay, I can trust these people, and I can trust them to do the right thing. And when we came up with the Thirst Conference, I pushed hard in the years there where, everything was a 15 day. And I was doing 15 days, but then I came off the road and I said, had you ever thought about doing 10 days or, 11 days? No, I can't do that. I said, okay. I said, let me try it. So they said, okay. So they gave me a team and scheduled a couple churches. And I went and did 11-day crusades. And I did that for quite a while. And then they, okay, that works. And so we started doing 11 days. And then Trent, who's masterful communicator and a masterful content provider, he wanted to do the Thirst team, and I was all in for a 4-day meeting. I thought we got to do, because you got to go with the flow. It's like Charles Finney used to say, you don't go against the flow of the people to have a meeting. You work with the people to have a meeting with the flow of the people. Well, 4-day meeting.
So tell me what your role is now.
I still do what needs to be done. You tell me what needs to be done, and I help Chris. I sell vehicles for Chris and the road teams. I was very involved. Then I got sick and took the whole summer off in the hospital, whatever. And but I'm back in that now. I'm still doing it, but but Aaron's picked up most of it because I'm 83 years old. I'm over the hill. But anyway, that's what I'm doing now.
Tell me about your wife, Vicci, and her experience through the years, because you've been here for 48 years, which means she's been here for 48 years.
Well, when we came, we were involved with the camp. The first year, the camp director worked through the summer, and then he left at the end of the summer season. So then we became camp director, and she was the camp nurse. I mean, she's a nurse, she's an RN, and so she became the camp nurse. And so she worked every summer. In the youth camp, you had to have an infirmary. You had to have a place where kids could go if they were sick, and it had to be staffed, had to have a nurse. So she was a camp nurse, and she always had somebody, a team member helping her, stayed there. So kids would get sick, they'd come and spend the night or whatever. And so she was very involved with that. In the early years, all the girls wore long dresses to ankle, and they wore them all day. When you got on the bus, you wore your ankle-length dress. because nobody wanted to be, there was no pants or culottes. It was, you could wear culottes if you were water skiing. Imagine that. But that's what we did. So there was these ankle-length dresses. The first America show, Nancy and my wife made all of the dresses. They sewed them and made all the dresses. And all of Dell's clothes had to be altered. And so my wife altered his clothes. And he'd come over and she'd pin his whatever, and take out of the waist. And he'd ask her, he'd put on a pair of pants one time and put them on and ask her, he said, "Vicci, does this make my butt look big?" Well, she didn't answer that, but anyway, but she altered all his clothes. And, but she was a seamstress and she did team clothing, by herself, her and Nancy, they did team clothing.
Wow. And
they hemmed all the boys' pants and took up the pants, and they bought the clothes and did everything.
Yeah.
That was my wife, and she did that for years.
And you both have just poured into this ministry your life,
Yeah,
your adult life.
And then that kind of changed. I don't know when that changed, but it changed. Her mother moved in with us in 1990, so she took care of her mother for like 14 years before her mother died. So that kind of took, and then we had kids in college and high school and whatever, and things just changed. But she's been, and we traveled as a family for 8 years. She never batted an eye, never hesitated when it was time to go. She was in the trailer,
Tough lady.
Packed and going, and just never thought about anything else, and never. So that's just, she's more of a trooper than I am, really. I mean, she's ready to go before I am, and she's still that way. So yeah, she's been a pioneer in a lot of ways. And in the early days, like I said, whenever we came, we were Christians, but we were still had a lot of rough edges. And my wife is one. She'll tell you what she thinks. I don't care. She don't care what. Well, Dell would come and say, "Vicci, count to 10 before you speak." And because she would just say what she thought. And so he did a lot of counseling with both of us, trying to get us, more mellowed out. We spent a lot of time together with Dell and Judy, the kids and the boys. Like I say, Dell went to Colorado every March, but in between, Christmas time, he'd always want to do something special with the boys. So he'd take them skiing up at some ski lodge up in northern Michigan. Well, Luke, my middle son, is just a little bit older than Dell. So they grew up together. They're pals, So anyway, but he'd want to take Luke with him. Well, we didn't have any money. But Dell would say, "Okay, if you'll memorize these scripture verses, you can go with us and I'll pay your way." So Luke would go to work and memorize scripture verses and recite them to Dell, and he'd load up and go skiing with him, So that's how Dell was. So those were good memories. But my wife has always been, she's always had a heart here, and she's always plugged in where she's camp nurse. She did clothing. I've always, just said, we're here and we'll be here till God calls us away. And so far, we've tried to leave a few times. We just couldn't. God wouldn't let us.
Are you glad you stayed?
Yeah, I am. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. It hadn't been easy here, but and I have done other things where, in the eyes of the world, I've been much more successful than here. As far as, I can't say that now because literally God has so blessed us that I can't say that, that I'm poor or have been penalized for, living a life of faith. God has more than supplied. It's like when we built our house, we didn't have any money. We couldn't even, we were barely, ends were meeting, we didn't know how. So there's no way I can go buy a house. So I said, but we got to build a house. So the property we're on right now came available. And so we got it in our name. And said, we're building a house. We don't have any money. But the money came. And a lot of people helped us raise it. And we built that house. And so far, so good. So,
Well, you mentioned that you have really good genes and your mother lived until her 100. So years and years from now, when you're still here fixing all of our stuff and looking back on your time here, what do you hope you leave behind?
Jesus said, good and faithful servant. So first of all, I want to be good. I want to be a good person. And that's probably the hardest thing I do is be a good person. Because I've got such a, I didn't get saved till I was 30 years old. So I spent 30 years on the other side, and I know what the other side's like. And sometimes the other side's never far away. But I want to be a good person, and I want to be faithful. For years there, the road team ministry was what I did. And they came in the summertime. Sometimes we had 4 teams on the road. We had 8 trailers, 8 trucks. We had sometimes 4 semis and vans and buses and everything. Everything had to roll. Everything had to be ready. By the time staff training started, the road team stuff had to be ready to go. And by the time it came for teams to leave, all the trucks and trailers had to be ready to go. I never missed one. I never missed a date. Every trailer rolled, every truck rolled, every team rolled with equipment. Never. And so I want to be known, okay, here's a faithful guy. We can trust this guy. If he says it, it'll happen. So that's what I want to be known by is that okay, he was good and faithful and a servant and still doing stuff. Chris, I help Chris. I'm now selling vehicles, and I just sold a truck. Now I'm going to sell a bus. So I'll get all that done, and whatever needs to be done, and I'll do it.
Well, thank you for spending time with me today and walking me down memory lane. And
there's a lot more, but anyway.
I know. I feel like we could do a multi-part series.
Yeah, we got all the road crashes and all the vehicle stuff. Yeah.
You've seen a lot.
That's another story.
Well, I just appreciate you sharing with me, and I appreciate you being here, but I appreciate you being here in the ministry because I think you have been a good and faithful servant, and
I'm still enjoying what I do,
good.
And so it's good, and I have a burden for Life Action to do well.
Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Changed Lives. If you were encouraged or inspired by what you heard, I want to invite you to take the next step. You can support the people whose story you just heard and others like them by visiting lifeaction.org/changedlives. Whether through prayer, giving, or sharing these stories, you can be part of what God is doing to revive relationships and transform lives.